Human gave an alien girl his only cup of heat. Her careful return of it later shifted his heart. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. John Miller had never expected to find himself in a situation like this. As a young scientist working at a research facility on the outskirts of the city, he was used to studying alien species through data and observation, not through face-to-face interaction. But here she was, Elira, an alien girl from a distant star system, stranded in the middle of the complex after an accidental detour through the atmosphere. He'd been the first to discover her, bewildered and out of place, her skin a vibrant shade of green, her large eyes scanning the environment with a mix of curiosity and confusion. She didn't seem dangerous. In fact, she appeared lost, vulnerable. It was then that John had made a decision that would unknowingly change both of their lives. He handed her the one thing he had on him, a small, insulated cup filled with the heat from a portable generator. In a world of technology and cold, mechanical efficiency, John had learned to appreciate the simplicity of warmth. The cup was a personal item, one that had been with him for years. It wasn't much, just a small, humble thing, but it was the only thing he had that could offer her even the slightest bit of comfort in the freezing cold air of the lab. Without hesitation, he handed it to her. Elira seemed to understand the gesture immediately. She took the cup, her fingers brushing against his. Her eyes softened for a moment, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. She didn't speak, but the warmth of the cup seemed to fill the space between them, as if it carried more than just heat. It carried a message of kindness. John watched as she turned away, the cup cradled carefully in her hands, disappearing into the depths of the facility. That moment lingered in his mind long after she was gone. What could a simple act like that mean? Was it just an exchange, or was something more profound happening between them? Days passed, and John returned to his work, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. He didn't know what, but he felt different. His thoughts kept drifting back to Elira, her eyes, her hands, the way she had looked at the cup with such care. Then, one day, as John was making his way through the hallways, he saw her again. Elira was standing there, waiting for him. In her hands was the cup, his cup, now returned to him. But it wasn't just the cup. It was the way she held it that made his heart skip a beat. She was careful with it, as if it was the most precious thing in the world. The simple act of returning the cup, of treating it with such reverence, made John realize something he hadn't expected. His heart was changing. Elira's careful return of his only cup of heat wasn't just about the cup. It was about her, about the connection that had unknowingly blossomed between them. He didn't know what it meant yet, but he knew one thing for certain. Something had shifted inside of him, and it was impossible to ignore. John stood in the hallway, holding the cup in his hands, the very same cup Elira had returned to him. It felt heavier now, not from its physical weight, but from the weight of what it represented. The simple exchange of a cup had somehow become something far more significant. Elira was standing a few feet away, her eyes watching him intently. She seemed to be waiting for his reaction, as if her careful return of the cup held a deeper meaning. John's mind raced. He had never been one to overanalyze simple acts. But this felt different. Elira was no ordinary alien. She had a certain grace, a quiet intelligence that seemed to radiate from her in waves. John had seen her interact with other researchers and crew members, but it was clear to him that there was something unique about the way she carried herself around him. It wasn't just the way she looked at him. It was the subtle way she moved, the way she seemed to understand things without needing to be told. He cleared his throat, unsure of what to say. "Thank you," he finally managed, his voice sounding foreign to his own ears. She nodded, her expression softening. "I didn't want to return it just yet," she said, her voice melodic, her accent distinct. "I wanted to make sure it was right, that it was how you wanted it." John was taken aback by the thoughtfulness in her words. The cup wasn't just an object to her. It was a symbol of something. But what? Elira continued, her gaze not leaving his face. "I've been studying you, John. Not just your work, but you. Your behavior. Your kindness. The confession caught him off guard. She had been studying him? His first instinct was to feel awkward, to pull away, but there was something in her eyes, something that made him hesitate. Elira was different from anyone he had ever met. She wasn't just curious about Earth. She wasn't just interested in the data. She was interested in him. And in that moment, he realized something. He was beginning to feel something for her too. It wasn't love, not yet. But there was a connection. A pull. A bond he couldn't explain. John shifted on his feet, still holding the cup. The heat from the generator was long gone, but the warmth between them felt real. I didn't expect this, he admitted, almost to himself. I didn't think I would care. Elira smiled softly, a quiet understanding passing between them. I know, she said simply. Neither did I. The silence hung between them for a moment, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt natural, as if they both understood the unspoken words. There was something about this moment that felt important. Something was changing between them, but neither of them could quite name it yet. They stood there, looking at each other, their minds swirling with unspoken thoughts. John finally broke the silence. I don't know what happens next, he said, his voice steady but unsure. But I think I'd like to find out. Elira's smile widened, and for the first time since they had met, John saw something in her eyes that wasn't just curiosity or observation. It was hope. Me too, she replied softly. And just like that, in the quiet of the hallway, John realized that whatever came next, he wasn't going to face it alone. The next few days passed in a strange, almost surreal haze. John couldn't stop thinking about Elira. Every time they crossed paths, there was a subtle shift in the air between them, a quiet understanding that neither of them had spoken aloud but both could feel. The way she looked at him, the way she seemed to care about the smallest details of his life, it all made him feel different. He had never been one to open up easily, but something about Elira made him want to. They spent more time together, their interactions slowly becoming more frequent. At first, it was simple, shared meals, brief conversations about their worlds. John was fascinated by her stories of her home planet, a world so different from Earth. The colors were more vivid, the skies a deep shade of violet, and the technology was far more advanced than anything John had ever seen. But as they talked, the conversation naturally shifted to something more personal. Elira was curious about John's life, about what it meant to be human. She asked him about emotions, about love, about what made him feel alive. John was caught off guard by the depth of her questions. He had always thought of emotions as something simple, something everyone understood. But with Elira, it felt like he was learning about them for the first time. They talked late into the night, discussing everything from the meaning of happiness to the strange feeling that had settled between them. The more they talked, the more John realized that he was beginning to trust her. It wasn't just her curiosity about him. It was the way she listened, the way she genuinely seemed to care about the answers. It was clear that she wasn't just studying Earth for scientific purposes. She was studying him, understanding him in ways that no one else had ever bothered to. One evening, as they walked through the quiet corridors of the research facility, Elira spoke up. Do you ever wonder, she began softly, if we're meant to meet like this? If there's some kind of connection between us? John stopped in his tracks, the question catching him off guard. I don't know, he said honestly, his voice quiet. But it does feel like there's something more here, doesn't it? Elira nodded, her eyes thoughtful. I feel it too. It's like everything led to this moment. Like our worlds were meant to collide. John's heart beat faster. He had never been one to believe in fate, but there was something in Elira's words that resonated with him. She was right. Everything about this, the way they met, the way they connected, the way they felt so natural together, seemed like it was meant to happen. It was as if their paths had always been on a collision course, and now that they had met, there was no going back. For the first time, John allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, this connection between them was real. Maybe it wasn't just a fluke or an oddity of chance. Maybe it was something more. The thought of it made his chest tighten in a way he hadn't expected. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing. He wanted to find out. I don't know what comes next, John said, his voice steady but filled with uncertainty. But I think I'm ready to find out with you. Elira smiled softly, her eyes filled with something that John couldn't quite place. Hope, perhaps. She nodded slowly. I am too, John. I'm ready. And in that moment, with the weight of unspoken emotions between them, They both realized that this was just the beginning. The beginning of something neither of them could have predicted, but both of them were now fully invested in. Days turned into weeks, and the bond between John and Elira grew stronger with each passing moment. Their connection had shifted from curiosity to something more meaningful, something neither of them had expected. Elira began to integrate more into John's life, learning about human culture, and in turn, teaching him about her own. They shared stories, laughter, and quiet moments that seemed to bridge the gap between their vastly different worlds. But as they spent more time together, John couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. Despite the closeness they had developed, there was an undeniable tension in the air, an unspoken question neither of them had dared to voice. What would happen when their time together came to an end? The research facility had never been meant to house a permanent resident, let alone an alien. John knew that eventually, Elira would have to return to her people, to her planet. He had tried not to think about it, but the thought was always there, lurking in the back of his mind. He had never been one to avoid reality, but this felt different. It wasn't just a matter of alien research anymore. It was about her. Elira had become more than just a subject of study. She had become someone he cared about deeply, and the thought of losing her, of returning to the empty life he had before she came into it, was something he wasn't ready to face. One evening, as they sat together on a small balcony overlooking the city, the weight of the unspoken words between them seemed to press down on both of them. Elira was the first to break the silence. "John," she began, her voice gentle but filled with a quiet urgency. "I've been thinking a lot about what happens next." Her words made his heart skip a beat. He had been dreading this moment, but now that it was here, he couldn't deny that it had to be said. He turned to face her, his voice steady but filled with uncertainty. "I've been thinking about it too," he admitted. "I don't want to lose what we have, but I know that eventually, you'll have to go back. Your people, your planet. I can't pretend that it won't happen." Elira looked at him with those deep, knowing eyes, her gaze filled with understanding. "I know," she said softly. "I know that I can't stay here forever. But, John, I've never felt anything like this before. I never thought it would be possible to connect with someone like this. And I don't want to leave without knowing that I've truly experienced what it means to be human." Her words struck him like a bolt of lightning. He had always thought of the differences between them, their species, their backgrounds, their worlds, as barriers. But in that moment, he realized that those differences didn't matter as much as he had thought. What mattered was what they had built together. "Elira," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion, "I don't want to lose you either. And I know this sounds crazy, but I can't imagine my life without you in it." She reached out and took his hand, her touch warm and reassuring. "I feel the same way, John," she whispered. "But I need you to know that no matter what happens, I will never forget what we've shared. You've changed me in ways I never thought possible. And I will carry that with me, always." They sat there for a long time, just holding each other's gaze, the weight of their words hanging between them like an invisible thread. Neither of them knew what the future held, but in that moment, they both knew that whatever happened, they would face it together. The uncertainty of their situation seemed a little less daunting, a little more bearable, knowing that they had each other. Inevitably, the day arrived when John had to face the reality he had been avoiding. Elira's time on Earth was coming to an end. The research facility had completed its mission, and the technology that had brought her here was being prepared for her return. It wasn't that John hadn't known this day would come, but now that it was actually happening, it felt harder than he ever imagined. He watched her as she prepared, organizing her things with a calmness that belied the storm of emotions brewing inside him. She seemed ready. She had always known that she would return to her planet, but for him, the thought of losing her felt like an unbearable weight pressing down on his chest. He had never felt so conflicted in his life. He wanted her to go home, of course. She belonged to her people, to her world. But the thought of her leaving his life completely, of never seeing her again, was more than he could bear. He found himself pacing the small lab, his mind racing. He had tried to convince himself that their bond, however deep, was fleeting, that it was something beautiful, but temporary. Yet now, with the end drawing near, he couldn't ignore the truth any longer. He had fallen for her. The realization hit him with full force as he watched Elira move around the room. She was so graceful, so otherworldly. And yet, there was something so human about the way she carried herself, something that made her feel like she truly belonged here, beside him. He couldn't imagine a future without her in it. And yet, he knew he had to let her go. Elira turned to him, as if sensing his turmoil. Her eyes were soft, understanding, and filled with a tenderness that made his heart ache. "John," she said gently, her voice as calm as ever, "I know this isn't easy for you. But you have to understand. I can't stay here. My people need me. I have responsibilities I can't ignore." He nodded, his throat tight. He had known this all along, but hearing her say it out loud made it even more real. "I know," he whispered. I don't know how to say goodbye to you." Elira took a step closer, her presence soothing yet overwhelming. "You don't have to say goodbye, John," she replied softly, her voice almost a whisper. "You'll always be a part of me. What we've shared here, this connection, it doesn't end just because I leave." The words were both a comfort and a reminder of the distance that would soon separate them. But for a moment, John allowed himself to believe that maybe it wasn't really goodbye. Maybe their bond would transcend the distance, the differences between their worlds. He reached out and took her hand, his touch lingering, unwilling to let go. "I'll miss you," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "I'll miss you too," she whispered, her eyes filled with emotion. The silence between them felt heavy, but it wasn't a silence of regret. It was a silence of understanding, of two people who had shared something profound, something that would stay with them no matter what. The next few hours passed in a blur. There were final moments, small conversations, shared glances, a lingering touch or two. John walked her to the transport station, the place where she would leave Earth and return to her home. As they stood together, the cold night air surrounding them, they both knew this was it. The moment had arrived. Elira turned to him, her eyes meeting his one last time. "Thank you, John," she said softly, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. "Thank you for everything. You've changed my life," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. "I'll never forget you, Elira." She smiled, her gaze soft. "I'll never forget you either." And with that, she turned and walked away, her figure slowly disappearing into the shadows of the transport. John stood there for a long moment, staring at the empty space where she had been, knowing that she was leaving, but also knowing that what they had shared would remain with him forever. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing for sure. Elira would always be a part of him, no matter where she was, no matter how far away she was. And that thought gave him a strange sense of peace. Weeks passed since Elira's departure, and life at the research facility slowly returned to its routine. The bustling halls, the constant flow of data, and the hum of technology felt the same, yet everything had changed for John. It wasn't the walls of the building or the machinery that had shifted, it was something inside him. He couldn't stop thinking about Elira. Her absence was like a quiet ache in his chest, a feeling he couldn't quite shake. It wasn't just the physical distance between them, it was the emotional distance, too. She had been the one person who truly saw him, who understood him in a way no one else ever had. And now, she was gone. John threw himself into his work, trying to distract himself from the emptiness he felt. He focused on the data, the research, the projects he had been working on before Elira arrived. But no matter how much he tried to immerse himself in the tasks at hand, something was always missing. His thoughts would wander back to her. He remembered the way her eyes had lit up when she spoke about her world, the way her smile had seemed to light up even the darkest corners of the lab. He missed the sound of her voice, the way she would ask him questions that made him think in ways he never had before. The days blended together, each one feeling like a carbon copy of the last. But then, one evening, as John sat alone in his office, lost in his thoughts, he received an unexpected message. It was from an unknown sender, but the message itself was unmistakable. It was a single line of text. "I will always remember you, John. You have changed me." The message sent a jolt through him. It was from Elira. His heart skipped a beat as he read the words over and over again. He hadn't expected to hear from her again. The message was brief, but it carried so much weight. John sat back in his chair, staring at the screen, his mind racing. What did it mean? Was it just a reminder of their connection? Or was there something more? He didn't know, but one thing was certain. He couldn't let it end like this. He couldn't let the bond they had shared fade into nothingness. He had to know if there was more to their story, if there was still a chance for them. John quickly typed a response, his fingers trembling as he pressed send. The message was simple, but it carried all the emotions he had been holding back. I will always remember you too, Elira. You are a part of me, no matter where you are. He hit send and sat back, his heart pounding in his chest. He didn't know if he would ever hear from her again, but for the first time since her departure, he felt a glimmer of hope. The message may have been short, but it was a sign that their connection, whatever it was still alive. And for John, that was enough. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew that this wasn't the end. This wasn't goodbye. It was just the beginning of something that neither of them had fully understood yet. And maybe, just maybe, they would find a way to be together again, no matter how far apart they were. For the first time in weeks, John felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Weeks turned into months, and John had grown accustomed to the quiet absence of Elira in his daily life. But her message had sparked something within him, a spark of hope that he hadn't realized he was missing. Every now and then, he would find himself looking at the stars, wondering if she was doing the same. It felt foolish, even childish, to think that a single message could bridge the gap of space and time between them. But the truth was, it gave him a sense of purpose again. John had come to realize that he couldn't just let go. The connection they shared was real, and though the distance between them was vast, it didn't diminish the bond they had formed. He couldn't let her memory fade into the past, nor could he ignore the possibility that maybe, just maybe, they could be a part of each other's future. One evening, as he sat alone in his apartment, the familiar hum of his computer in the background, he received another message. His heart skipped a beat as he saw her name flash on the screen. John, it's Elira. I've been thinking a lot about us, about everything. He could feel the weight of her words through the simple text, and he didn't waste a moment. He quickly typed a response. I've been thinking about you too. What's going on, Elira? Her reply came moments later. I've spoken with my people. They've been keeping track of Earth's progress, and there's a possibility, a small one, that I might be able to return. Not permanently, but enough to see you again. I can't promise anything, but I wanted you to know that I'm working on it. The words hit him like a wave. For a moment, he was speechless. The idea of seeing her again, of reconnecting after all this time, seemed impossible, yet here she was, giving him hope once more. His heart raced as he typed, his hands trembling with a mix of excitement and disbelief. Elira, that would mean everything to me. I don't care how long it takes. I just want to see you again. He hit send before he could second-guess himself. The wait for her response felt like an eternity, but finally, it came. I don't know when or how, but I promise you this. Our bond is not something that distance can erase. It's real, John, and I will find a way back to you. The words echoed in his mind long after the conversation ended. He couldn't quite believe it, but something deep inside him told him that this wasn't just a fleeting moment of hope. Elira was serious. She was fighting for them, for their connection, and that meant more to him than he could ever express. For the first time in months, John allowed himself to believe in the possibility of a future with her. He didn't know how it would happen, or when, but one thing was clear. He wasn't alone in his feelings. Elira felt the same way, and that realization gave him the courage to keep going, to keep believing that someday, no matter the obstacles, they would be reunited. As he sat there, staring at the screen, a wave of peace washed over him. It wasn't an ending, not yet. It was just another step in their journey, a journey that was far from over. Months had passed since Elira's message, and John had continued with his work, his thoughts drifting between the lab and the quiet hope she had reignited. In him, he had often found himself standing outside at night, gazing at the stars, wondering if she was doing the same. It was strange, feeling so connected to someone so far away, yet he couldn't shake the thought that they were somehow on the same wavelength. He had made peace with the uncertainty of their situation, but deep down, he held on to the belief that Elira would find a way back to him. The world felt different now, as if it had expanded beyond the walls of the research facility and the city. He wasn't just a scientist working on alien technology anymore. He was someone waiting for a connection to be restored. One evening, as John was finishing up his work for the day, he received another message from Elira. His heart skipped a beat as he opened it. John, I've spoken to my people again. They've agreed to allow me to return for a short visit. It won't be easy, but I believe it can happen. We will find a way to make it work. John sat still for a moment, his mind racing. He read the message again and again, making sure it wasn't just a dream. Elira was coming back. The excitement was almost overwhelming. He quickly typed a response, his fingers flying across the keys. Elira, this is the best news I've heard in so long. I don't care how long it takes. I just want to see you again. He hit send, his heart pounding in his chest. The thought of seeing her again, of being able to hold her, speak to her, and share the moments they had left together filled him with hope. As he waited for her reply, John couldn't help but feel that everything was starting to fall into place. It wasn't going to be easy. He knew that. But the fact that she was willing to fight for their connection meant everything to him. It was a reminder that love, or whatever this bond was between them, could transcend distance, time, and space. The wait for Elira's arrival was agonizing. Every day seemed to drag on longer than the last, but John held on to the promise she had made. Finally, the day came when he received another message. This one was different. It had a time and a place. I'll be arriving tomorrow. I can't explain everything yet, but we will have time to talk. I'll be waiting for you at the usual spot. John's heart raced as he read the words. It was happening. He was going to see her again. The next day, John stood at the designated spot, his heart pounding in anticipation. The wind was cool, and the sky had the faintest hint of twilight. Every minute felt like an eternity as he waited for her to arrive. And then, he saw her, Elira. She was standing there, her figure outlined against the soft glow of the setting sun. Their eyes met, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Elira smiled, her eyes soft with emotion. John took a tentative step forward, his breath catching in his throat. Elira, he whispered, I can't believe you're here. She took a step towards him, her voice filled with warmth. I told you, John. I'd find a way back to you. And in that moment, standing together in the fading light of the evening, they both knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. This was not just a reunion. It was the beginning of something new, something they had both fought for, and something they were now ready to embrace. Inevitably, the moment they had both been waiting for had arrived. John and Elira stood together, their hands barely touching but their hearts clearly connected in ways that words could not capture. As the minutes passed, the setting sun cast its soft, golden light over the two of them, creating a surreal atmosphere. It felt as though time itself had slowed, giving them a brief moment to savor their reunion before the inevitable reality of the situation set in. Elira's eyes met John's, and in that brief gaze, there was an understanding, a shared knowledge that this was only the beginning of something far bigger than either of them had anticipated. I didn't think I'd get here this soon, Elira said, her voice gentle but filled with a quiet intensity. John smiled softly, his heart swelling with emotion. You said you would, he replied simply. The words felt like a promise fulfilled. But despite the overwhelming joy of seeing her again, a quiet realization lingered between them. Their time together was still limited. Though this visit had been granted, it wasn't permanent. Elira had her responsibilities, and John had his. The future remained uncertain, a path not yet paved. But in that moment, it didn't matter. They had this time. They had now. I can't believe you're really here, John murmured, reaching for her hand. Elira's fingers gently wrapped around his, the touch sending a ripple of warmth through him. I'm here, John, she said, her voice a comforting whisper. And I'll make the most of every moment I have with you. John felt a rush of emotions, gratitude, joy, but also a quiet fear. What would happen when it was time for her to leave again? He knew he couldn't hold her to Earth. She had a life, a duty, far beyond the confines of the research facility and the city. He couldn't ask her to stay, not when she had her own world to return to. But the thought of being separated again, even if only temporarily, was a sharp pang in his chest. I don't know how to let go again, John admitted, his voice breaking slightly. Elira reached up to touch his face, her fingertips brushing his cheek gently. You won't have to let go, she reassured him. We won't. What we have is real, John. It's not just a moment in time. It's something that lasts, no matter where we are, no matter how far apart we might be. Her words were a balm to his soul, soothing the worries that had been building inside him since their first goodbye. John nodded, his heart heavy with both love and a bittersweet hope. I believe you, he whispered. I believe in us. And with those simple words, a new chapter of their journey began. They stood together in the fading light, knowing that no matter the challenges they would face, no matter the time or space that separated them, their connection would always endure. They didn't have all the answers, but they knew that they would face whatever came next, together.